This episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by the Managing Madrid Podcast live in New York City on August 4th, hosted by Tempo Times Square Hotel. This stylish hotel is in Times Square, steps from restaurants, shops, and Broadway theaters. A great option for when you book your stay in New York for El Clasico this summer at MetLife Stadium in August, or whenever you're in New York. Central Park, Radio City Music Hall, Rockefeller Center, and Grand Central Station are within 1 mile. Their outdoor terrace overlooks the heart of the city, and their restaurant also offers iconic NYC views. Join us for an unforgettable evening with the Managing Madrid team live in the heart of New York City. On August 4th, come to Tempo by Hilton, New York Times Square, and spend 3 exciting hours with Kiyan Sobhani, that's me, Gabe Lesra, and special guests just a day after Real Madrid faces Barcelona at MetLife Stadium. This interactive podcast event is a must-attend for any Real Madrid fan. The team will be recording a live episode, giving out exclusive prizes, answering your burning questions, and hanging out with fans in a relaxed and fun atmosphere. Don't miss this unique opportunity to connect with the voices behind the Managing Madrid Podcast and other fellow Madridistas. Listeners, coming up is a segment from this week's members-only podcast that went up over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. Lucas, Navarrete, and I, we answered questions. We also had a big segment on Mbappe, which is today's clip. And we had a fun debate about Joselu and Cristiano. If you know, you know. We had a debate about this earlier in the season, and Lucas brought it back up, and I did not back down. I doubled down on my stance. That very heated argument is in the full show. You can click on the link in the show notes, where you can also find the link to book your tickets to New York, the New York podcast. So in the show notes, 2 important links. Book your spot to our New York podcast and the full episode, which is over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. And if you're on YouTube and you cannot access Patreon in your country for whatever reason, no big deal. You can simply hit join underneath this YouTube video on browser, or just hit the memberships tab on YouTube, same content. All right, let's get to it. Thanks, guys.
I mean, from a football perspective, it obviously makes sense. He makes the team better. I'm just sad that Real Madrid still went after him after what happened 2 years ago. I will not be able to forgive and forget both what happened 3 or 4 days before the 2022 Champions League final, with Mbappe announcing the whole thing there. The whole situation being a big distraction for the team and the players ahead of that final. The press conference, the players had to hear and entertain a bunch of questions about Mbappe instead of focusing on the match against Liverpool. And luckily, obviously, Real Madrid still came out on top in that game and conquered La Decimocuarta. But I mean, I know he will have many things to say about what happened in 2022, especially during his presentation with Real Madrid whenever France are eliminated from the Euros. I know he will have many things to say and to explain what happened behind the scenes for that to happen, but I still think he could have been, obviously PSG, I'm not even willing to ask anything from them in that regard, but Mbappe himself could have at least been way more classy, in my opinion, in how he tackled that whole situation, and I'm not happy that Real Madrid kind of refused to show pride in this regard and still went after him after such a successful season. But mainly not. I mean, again, from a football perspective, he makes sense. I don't care that Real Madrid won the double. I still think he improves the team. But yeah, from a pride perspective, if you will, I think you could have and would have taught a lesson to the world of football that you don't mess with Real Madrid. Then the way he treated Real Madrid in 2022 is not the way you treat this club. That's a missed opportunity, in my opinion.
So he had an interview after the season ended, one-on-one with somebody, some big TV outlet, I think. And he was talking about the pressure that was put on him, basically. Do you buy that? Do you think there was like political pressure for him to sign? Like, do you buy into the golden prison narrative?
Much has been said about that, and we will still again have many things to hear about this pressure and this golden, as you mentioned, golden prison he was locked in during 2022. I just think him being Mbappe and one of the biggest figures in world football, he should have had some saying in what happened there. Even if PSG are as powerful as they are, even if France pressured him a lot, Macron pressured him to stay. I buy all that. I mean, France definitely needed him to stay. The Ligue 1 needed him to stay for sure. Okay, fine. I still think I'm not when I'm complaining about this, I'm not complaining about his decision to stay in PSG. He's entitled to make that decision, right?
The
I
way he
mean,
did it.
it's the way he did it. Announcing it 3 days ahead of the final, man. Or 3 or 4 days, 5 days, you name it. I don't remember. It was pretty close to the final. I remember Benzema having to entertain questions about about Mbappe instead of focusing on Liverpool in one of those pre-Champions League finals interview. So that was the most ridiculous thing and what bothered me the most. It's not about him staying. I want to make this clear. I mean, he was entitled and he had the right to make any decision to he won it. So I'm totally fine with him staying. It's just the matter of him not waiting maybe until the Champions League final ended to announce this decision and yeah, leave Real Madrid hanging, if you will. So yeah.
Do you think it's drinking the Kool-Aid to go as far as to say that they even forced him to make that announcement before the final to derail Real Madrid?
I'm definitely certain that that's what PSG wanted to do, and that's why PSG kind of tried to do this the way it happened. I still think Mbappe, being Mbappe, could have said no. I'm not doing this way. I'm waiting. I'm waiting 7 days. I don't care what you guys say. It's not happening now. You can leak it to the press, whatever. My official announcement is not going to happen 3 days ahead of the Champions League final. He should have this power, right? I mean, even with all the pressure, even with all the power PSG have, even with Al Khelaifi being as powerful as he is, obviously the Qatar president being as powerful as he is, Mbappe should have the power not to announce this 3 or 4 days ahead of the final. And again, I'm sure PSG would have leaked this stuff 3 days ahead of the final anyway, but the official announcement shouldn't have happened then.
Keep something in mind when we're talking about Mbappe's power. This is the player who was banished from the team, and he was the scathing. I mean, we haven't spoken in a long time, but after we signed him, his first press conference as a Real Madrid player, which is with the French national team, he goes at PSG and he talks about how if it wasn't for Lucho and the sporting director's name for some reason is
Campos.
my mind now. Campos, Luis Campos. If it wasn't for them, I would have not have been saved. So I'm kind of torn on this one. It's not for me to sit here and cry and show sympathy towards Kylian Mbappe, who is probably his life is basically on a cloud with a lot of money and a superstar, which no doubt he worked hard for. So I'm not discrediting him, but I'm not going to sit here and cry in a corner for him. But I am saying that I think there was definitely some pressure for him. I'd be surprised if there wasn't.
Let me ask you this, though. What kind of retaliation could he face if he were just to say, guys, my official announcement is not happening now. It's happening in 7 days. That's the only thing. I'm signing the contract. The agreement is done. I'm staying. We all have agreements. Okay, fine. My official announcement it is happening in 7 days' time. What's the retaliation he could have faced in that situation? What kind of, again, I'm asking myself this question, and what's PSG going to do if he says this?
What if Macron was standing behind him with a pistol?
Or Macron, for some reason, and I don't know why, he's been made this big enemy or this big antagonist or this big villain about the whole Mbappe situation. And to me, obviously, he probably had some things to say to Mbappe, and yeah, some pressure was probably applied. But to me, I mean, he's definitely not as big a villain as Al Khelaifi or the Qatar president, right?
No. What if the more realistic outcome? If the pistol is too far fetched, what if the deal was announce it now and
And you earn more.
here's
Okay,
an
yeah.
extra briefcase. Extra
Then
briefcase.
I'm sorry. Then I still think the same way about Mbappe. Then you having some principles and still going to earn a big contract. Obviously, yeah, not that bonus, not that big extra. Still, I mean, still a pretty big contract. You have to assume he has the right to say, no, I'm not going to treat Madrid this way.
Do you think what is the like? I don't think Mbappe was growing up. I don't think he grew up as a Madridista the way
Sure.
sometimes. I think he grew up admiring Real Madrid
Sure.
because of the club, of Zidane, of Cristiano, whatever. I don't like. He's not like me and you, like waking up
Sure,
like any
absolutely.
time of day to watch.
He
his
doesn't
team.
have to, by the way.
No, no, for sure. And I'm not saying he should. The point I'm getting to is like, what's the equivalent of like, I don't know, a team that you admire but you're not really a fan of, and you
It's
just make
you don't even have to admire that other team to treat this other team with respect, right? After spending the last few months, if not years, negotiating with them.
My point is this: as a Real Madrid fan, if I was ever good enough to be a footballer at that level, especially, and I had the chance to join Real Madrid, I wouldn't do any of the stuff that Mbappe did. But if it was a team that, like, for example, I don't know, Arsenal, just pulling a random example.
You like Arsenal, though.
Yeah, I don't mind Arsenal. Like, I don't hate Arsenal. Like, I like them. I grew up, I liked watching that Thierry Henry, Robert Pires, Dennis Bergkamp era. That was a cool team. Like, I'm not a fan, but I loved them. Like, if I had a chance to join Arsenal and, they told me, hey, announce it now before Arsenal's Champions League final, and here's your kids' college tuition as well, I'd probably do it. If it was Real Madrid, I wouldn't do it because I really love Real Madrid. But if it was Arsenal, I would probably take money.
Fine, and that's what he did. I don't have I do have a problem with what he did. But my issue now is that I think Real Madrid should say, okay, this is the way you handle business 2 years from now. Our door is closed now. No matter how brilliant you are as a player. What you did is, in my opinion, if I were the president or whoever makes this call, is obviously the president, but anyway, my opinion is, no matter how good you are, this is not how you treat a club like Real Madrid. This is not how you treat a club, period. Not a club like Real Madrid. This is not how you treat a club. Our doors are closed.
But you remember, I don't know what the exact timeline was, but enough time had passed where I think Florentino eventually talked about it, or someone reported that.
Yeah, he went to El Chiringuito pretty much that same night or the following week or whatever, yeah.
Okay, so what did he say in that moment? Because I might be thinking of a different timeline.
He was paraphrasing. He basically said, Mbappe changed. My idea of who Mbappe was has changed.
Yes, or something to the effect. I think it was that this was not the Mbappe that
the Mbappe I knew, something like that, paraphrasing,
So something happened, but didn't he later on go on and say that because Mbappe called Florentino?
Yeah, but
Florentino was like, okay, I get it. Like,
Mbappe called Florentino, and if reports are accurate, he called Florentino after kind of ghosting him for the last few weeks or so. Remember? That's what reports. I think even Florentino himself said this. That he kind of got worried about this becoming an issue when Mbappe wasn't like returning his calls or his texts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I don't. I guess the long story short for me is I don't think Florentino held it. Like, he didn't hold on to a grudge. I mean, that's obvious. He went and signed him later, but I think he clearly looked at it as like, okay, this guy makes our team better. He still wants to join us, and let's do it. Let's pull the trigger.
The equivalent of what Mbappe did ahead of that Champions League final would be if Real Madrid were to hold this signing ceremony at the Bernabeu with all the Real Madrid TV cameras. Florentino gives Mbappe the new contract. Mbappe signs. Then Mbappe gives the contract back for Florentino to sign it. And Florentino, in front of the Real Madrid TV cameras, rips the whole paper and tears it down. That's the equivalent of what he did. I'm serious. That's pretty much what
I
he
don't
did 2
think that
years
would be
ago.
the equivalent. I think the equivalent would be
A bit tongue in cheek, but you know what I'm saying. What he did was pretty humiliating, man, and pretty big distraction ahead of the biggest game of the season. Again, mind you, that Real Madrid were not as big favorites as they were this year against Dortmund. Like, you needed focus and you needed to be sharp for that final against Liverpool. It's not like you could have gotten away with a poor performance if you were distracted or not composed.
Did it? The one thing I thought of was the way he spoke about PSG after he left.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's clear like he had I think there's going to be, my prediction is like he'll throw in more stuff like later on.
He has to.
Yeah, like there's enough to like reveal that we kind of know, but it's not publicly said yet, officially anyway.
Should we believe whatever he says 100%, or is just a campaign from him and from the Real Madrid media and the PR to kind of improve his public persona?
I wouldn't put it past,
or people like me, fans like me anyway, to say, oh yeah, this poor kid.
I mean, on one level, my feeling is that I think you should just put it aside and just focus. And
it's not going to happen.
And
the whole
not
press
talk
conference
badly
is the whole
about
press
anyone.
conference is going to be about what happened 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure. I mean, a couple
Oh,
questions
that'll be
about Vinicius.
I never thought about that.
A couple questions about Vinicius here and there. Yeah, you're joining your dream club, whatever. But most questions will be what happened 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure.
What if they don't take questions?
Nah, not going to happen. I don't think.
That happened at some point
When?
with Sergio Ramos's departure.
No, Ramos. No. Benzema departure, I think. Ramos did held a press conference. Yeah. It was Benzema. Pretty sure. It was Benzema.
Ramos was on Zoom. It was during the pandemic.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. And Florentino wasn't even there.
Well, yeah.
So on one level, I think like maybe he should just not talk about his employer in such a bad way, even if he's correct. Just let it go. On the other hand, I'm like, I don't see him talking this way about Monaco. And I think if he left us one day, which I think it's on the table. Like, I don't, who knows what's going to happen, but I don't know if he'll talk about us that way either. And I think this PSG experiment really was terrible. Like, I think, Messi has said some stuff, like how he wasn't happy there. The Neymar thing didn't end well. Ramos didn't have any fond memories there.
It was just a PR campaign before the World Cup, and that's it. Whatever I thought ahead of the World Cup, saying that PSG were going to start dismantling the team after the World Cup, kind of came true. I know they still have a decent team. They're still competitive, but they're starting Kang In Lee. They're starting. No, I'm serious now. They're starting They Asensio is supposed to be a big name for them. They're starting Kang In Lee and all that, so they will still compete in the Champions League. But you know what I'm saying? They're not as big of a powerhouse as they were like 4 or 5 years ago.
I think it'll be Dembele, Barcola. I don't know what's going to happen with Xavi Simons. I don't think he wants to stay, but
whatever you think about those players, they're fine. They are not in the same tier as whatever PSG assembled 4 or 5 years ago. It was just a PR campaign for the World Cup. That's what happened. Yeah. And that's definitely 100, like a big chunk of why PSG put so much pressure on Mbappe to stay, for sure. Like the 2022 World Cup is not going to be played with you as a Real Madrid player. That's the way it went, I think. And after that, it all became much easier because Qatar decided to kind of cut down a little bit on the investment they made on PSG. That's what happened, in my opinion. Pretty clear, anyway.